Recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cordray, I wanted to ask you a few questions about the time periods the CFPB provides for certain requests. This is a set of regulations containing the rule relating to investigations. That's 12 CFR 1080. When the CFPB initiates a case, it serves a civil investigative demand requesting certain information, including answers to questions, documents, written reports, and testimony before an investigator. Once they receive a civil investigative demand, do you know how many days that person has before they have to meet with the CFPB investigator?
So, first of all, what I know is this is
Just
standard.
It's a one or two word answer, please.
So,
I only have 5 minutes.
You
don't know. Well,
it needs more than that.
It's
Number
10
one,
days.
it's a standard practice. All attorneys general use the same
10 days
approach.
is what they have.
Second,
if a person
we
wants to
typically
challenge
negotiate that date
Mr.
with
Chairman,
the party so that they have additional time.
Sir, the time belongs to the gentleman from Florida.
He asked a question. Don't I get a chance to answer?
I asked
the time
you if you could
belongs
answer
to the
one or two
gentleman
words,
from Florida.
Fine. I asked you how many days. That doesn't take a book to answer that.
We negotiate.
If a person wants to challenge the civil investigative demand or modify the scope of the investigation, do you know how many days they have to file an appeal with the CFPB? Just
There's a specified time in the
20,
rules.
20
It's a reasonable
20
time.
days is the answers.
Yep.
It can really be answered that simply. If a person wants more time to prepare a challenge to the CFPB investigative demand, do you know what the CFPB regulations say about the extension?
What I know is our practice has been to negotiate that timing with the party and to give them a reasonable amount of time.
Well,
we've done it many times.
Your literature says they're, quote, disfavored, close quote. Do you know what the penalty is for failure to comply entirely or only in part with a civil investigative demand?
What I know is we had an example of this recently. We investigated a payday lender. It resulted in our first enforcement action. They were actually destroying documents as they were under investigation.
The answer to my question
that
is
was
a
totally
civil contempt
inappropriate.
Charge and
resulted in a $5 million
in
penalty.
Federal District Court. This is a set of regulations that govern the investigation of non-bank covered persons. It's 12 CFR 1091. When CFPB issues a notice of reasonable cause against a person who offers consumer financial products, how much time do they have to respond? 30 days.
Specified in our rules.
30 days.
Okay.
If that person fails to respond to the notice of reasonable cause, do you know what happens to them then?
What I know is these are law enforcement activities. People need to take them seriously.
They lose the right to respond and have a decision and order automatically entered against them.
These are law enforcement activities, and people need to comply with the law.
Do you know what happens to a person if they give vague or incomplete answers in their responses to a notice of reasonable cause?
That's something that we negotiate in terms of
they lose the right to rely upon any legal argument, document, or other information that they could have used in their defense if they failed to include it in their response. This is a letter from me to you, dated December 21st, 2012, containing 19 questions about the CFPB Consumer Data Collection Program. This is a CFPB response dated February 21st. This is a letter responding to my questions. As you can see, it's 3 paragraphs long. 19 questions I asked, the answer was 3 paragraphs long. Paragraph 3 is a 2-sentence conclusion, actually. How many days do you think it took the CFPB to respond to me?
So let me say, at the time that you submitted...
62 days, you don't know.
At the time that you submitted 19 questions, others submitted questions, there were well over 150 questions that we had to respond to.
The people you regulate can have a lot of people ask them questions at the same time.
And nobody got favorable treatment. They all got responded to together.
Do you think a 3-paragraph, 1-page letter provided complete and satisfactory answers to my 19 questions?
I'd like to see the letter, but many of them were incorporating by reference.
No.
Other questions were being answered at the same time.
For the record, as marked, is the 19 questions I resubmitted in December 2012. Would you like to guess when I got the answers to those questions?
Again, I recall at one period we had over 150 questions, multi-part questions from this committee, and we answered them as quickly as we could.
For the record, they arrived on September 17th, 2013. Do you know how many days it took to respond to my question from July? That's 70 days. Do you know how many days it took for me to finally get a response to the questions I originally sent you in December? That's 270 days. It's a bad case of, I think, democracy here.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
What I understand is we've answered all your questions. It takes longer than you like. We'll look at that again.